I stared at my reflection that morning, tracing the fine lines around my eyes with gentle fingertips. Questions tumbled through my mind. Questions about relevance, beauty, and whether I still possessed that certain something that once felt so natural. The woman looking back at me was both familiar and unknown, a testament to years lived fully, heartbreaks weathered, and joys embraced with open arms. She wore her 53 years in the silver strands framing her face and the laugh lines etched at the corners of her mouth. Time had certainly made its mark, yet there was something in those eyes, my eyes, that hadn't dimmed with the passing years. A spark, a confidence, a depth that wasn't there in my 20s when smooth skin and perky features did all the talking. Have you ever stood before your reflection and wondered if others still see what you once saw? If the magnetism that once seemed effortless now requires constant tending, like a garden fighting against the first frost of autumn? It happened at Sarah's dinner party last weekend. That moment when I first began to question my assumptions. I had arrived feeling somewhat invisible, dressed in what I considered a safe outfit for a woman my age. The conversation flowed around the elegant dining table, stories and laughter mingling with the clinking of wine glasses. I shared an anecdote from my recent solo trip to Santa Fe, and suddenly realized the room had quieted. All eyes turned attentively toward me. Later, Jennifer, Sarah's 30-something colleague, approached me with genuine curiosity. "There's something about the way you tell stories," she said, her eyes bright with admiration. "You have this presence that just fills the room." What struck me wasn't just her words, but the sincerity behind them. No patronizing tone, no surprise that someone my age could command attention. When was the last time you received a compliment that made you reconsider how you see yourself? Chapter 3. Signals in the Everyday. The signs were there all along, I realized, hidden in plain sight like wildflowers along a path I'd walked 1,000 times. The barista who remembers my name and engages me in conversation while hurried 20-somethings wait impatiently behind me. My neighbor David, who always seems to find a reason to linger when we cross paths while walking our dogs. "Your laugh," he once told me. "It's contagious. Makes the whole block feel brighter." Such a simple observation, yet it stayed with me for days. Even in professional settings, I began noticing how colleagues would subtly position themselves near me during meetings, seeking my input on matters beyond my direct responsibilities. Their eyes would hold mine a beat longer than necessary during conversations. These moments weren't about youthful beauty or fitting some arbitrary standard. They were responses to something deeper, something I'd been cultivating without even realizing it. Have you noticed these subtle signals in your own life, perhaps dismissing them as mere politeness? Emily, a close friend since college, has always chased the latest procedures and products. At 48, she looks done. Beautiful by conventional standards, yet somehow diminished, her expressions muted by treatments meant to preserve youth. "I just want to look fresh," she explained during our monthly lunch date, wincing slightly as she sipped her iced tea. Meanwhile, across the restaurant, I noticed a woman in her 60s who drew every eye in the room without trying. This stranger wore her gray hair in a stylish bob, her outfit simple but impeccably tailored. What caught my attention wasn't her appearance alone, but the ease with which she carried herself. No constant touching of her face or hair, no shrinking to appear smaller. She embodied something I suddenly wanted more than youthful skin, complete comfort in her own being. The wisdom to know that beauty isn't about absence of age, but presence of self. When did we start believing that beauty has an expiration date? I began experimenting with this theory, observing how small changes in my own confidence affected those around me. Walking into my favorite bookstore in downtown Chicago, I straightened my posture and moved with deliberate grace. The young man at the register, who had barely acknowledged me on previous visits, engaged me in conversation about my selection. "You have great taste," he said, genuinely interested in my thoughts on the author. "You remind me of my favorite professor. At my nephew's graduation party, I wore a vibrant blue dress instead of the muted tones I'd gravitated toward in recent years. The color matched the boldness I felt stirring inside. A reminder of the woman I'd always been, but somehow forgotten. You might be surprised how the language of confidence speaks volumes without saying a word. Have you noticed how differently people respond when you embrace rather than apologize for the space you occupy in the world? Looking around at my book club one evening, I realized we were all different versions of the same journey. Caroline, at 62, radiated a quiet sensuality that had nothing to do with trying to appear younger than her years. Linda, nearing 70, spoke with such animation about her passion for urban gardening that her entire face transformed, making age irrelevant in the light of her enthusiasm. These women weren't fighting time, they were dancing with it. Then there was Rebecca, barely 40 and already anxious about every new line, constantly comparing herself to filtered images on Instagram. The contrast was striking. Those embracing their evolution seemed to possess a magnetic quality that those resisting it lacked. Can you think of women in your life who embody this timeless appeal? Those who show us that beauty doesn't diminish with age, but transforms into something more complex and interesting, like a fine wine developing character with time? The most profound shift came when I stopped desperately wanting to be seen and simply allowed myself to be visible. There's a difference, subtle but significant, between craving validation and owning your presence. I no longer entered rooms wondering if I measured up or if others were judging my aging appearance. Instead, I brought with me the accumulated wealth of my experiences, the hard-earned wisdom of my years, offering them as gifts rather than apologies. Surprisingly, this mental adjustment manifested physically. My movements became more fluid, my smile more genuine, my laugh more uninhibited. The tension I'd been carrying in my shoulders, tension born of constantly measuring myself against impossible standards, began to dissolve. When was the last time you truly felt seen? Not for how well you've preserved your youth, but for the magnificent totality of who you've become. The question itself can be transformative. If this journey resonates with you, take a moment to connect with our community. Like this video and subscribe to our channel to join thousands of women rediscovering their timeless beauty. Your story matters, and together, we're rewriting the narrative of aging. Last month, while waiting for my flight at O'Hare Airport, I caught a man watching me as I read my book. Not with the predatory stare I might have received in my youth, but with a thoughtful appreciation that felt somehow more meaningful. When our eyes met, he didn't look away embarrassed but offered a respectful nod. Later, when the gate area became crowded, he gave up his seat for an elderly woman while choosing to stand near where I was sitting, eventually striking up a conversation about my book. What struck me was the quality of his attention. He wasn't seeking to validate his own attractiveness by connecting with youth, but genuinely engaging with me as a complete human being. Our conversation ranged from literature to travel, each topic revealing mutual respect. How often do we misinterpret or completely miss these signals because we've been conditioned to believe that only certain types of attention at certain ages qualify as confirmation of our beauty? On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, I ducked into a small boutique in Lincoln Park to escape the downpour. The shop assistant, a stylish woman in her 30s named Megan, approached as I browsed a display of scarves. "That emerald would be stunning with your coloring," she remarked, gesturing toward a silk scarf I'd been admiring. "You have exactly the confidence to carry such a bold piece." Not, "You're still attractive for your age," or any of the backhanded compliments women like me often receive. As she helped me try different styles, Megan mentioned that she hoped to age like me, with such elegance and presence. The comment caught me off guard, especially coming from someone younger, someone I might have envied in the past. When you receive a genuine compliment that acknowledges your current beauty rather than comparing it to your past self, treasure it. These moments reveal that you haven't lost your allure. It has simply matured into something more nuanced and powerful. Mark and I had been divorced for 6 years when we reconnected at our daughter's college graduation in Boston. The years apart had changed us both. His hair now salt and pepper, the lines around his eyes deeper when he smiled. We fell into easy conversation during the reception, that familiar rhythm still there beneath the years of separate lives. "You know," he said as we shared a quiet moment away from the crowd, "you're more beautiful now than when we were together." I laughed, assuming it was just polite nostalgia, but he shook his head. "I mean it, Rebecca. There's something about you now, a certainty, a presence, You're fully yourself in a way you couldn't be at 30. This observation from someone who had known me intimately in my younger years carried weight. It wasn't about my physical appearance, but about the woman I'd become. The authenticity that comes only with embracing every chapter of your story. Helen, my mentor from my early teaching days at Northwestern, represents everything I aspire to embody. At 78, she still teaches one seminar each semester. Her class is always the first to fill during registration. Students flock to her not because she tries to relate through affected youthfulness, but because her decades of experience inform every discussion, every piece of feedback. Her silver hair is always styled simply but elegantly, her clothes chosen for comfort and quality. The secret, she told me over coffee one afternoon, is to stop thinking of beauty as something that happens to you and start recognizing it as something that happens through you. It's not about being looked at. It's about how you see the world. Consider the most magnetic older women you know. Aren't they the ones who have stopped apologizing for taking up space? The ones who have released the exhausting pursuit of youth in favor of embracing the richness of their current chapter? 6 months into this journey of rediscovery, I found myself standing before my bathroom mirror again. The face looking back at me hadn't magically shed its lines or reversed time's undeniable march across my features. Yet something fundamental had shifted in how I perceived my reflection. Where I once cataloged flaws, I now saw character. Where I once lamented changes, I now recognized evolution. The silver strands in my chestnut hair caught the light like threads of wisdom. My body, with its softened contours and evidence of life fully lived, now felt less like a betrayal and more like a faithful companion that had carried me through countless experiences: childbirth and career triumphs, illness and recovery, love and heartbreak. What would change for you if you could look in the mirror tomorrow and see not what time has taken, but what it has so generously given? Not loss, but accumulation of beauty that only comes through living fully in each moment? My daughter Sophie, now 24 and navigating the treacherous waters of early adulthood in Vancouver, called me late one night. "Mom," she confessed, "I'm so tired of trying to look perfect all the time. The filters, the comparison, the constant pressure." I listened as she described the exhaustion of performing for social media, the anxiety of feeling constantly evaluated on appearance alone. Her vulnerabilities echoed my own at her age, though the platforms and particulars had changed dramatically. "How did you get past it?" she asked. "You always seem so comfortable in your skin now." The question touched me deeply. My daughter seeing something in me that I had only recently begun to recognize and value in myself. This may be the most meaningful sign of beauty and maturity. When younger women look to you not with pity for what youth has stolen, but with admiration for the freedom aging has granted. How might your relationship with your own beauty influence women coming after you? I no longer search for signs that I'm still attractive in the way society narrowly defines the term. Instead, I notice evidence of my impact. The student who emails years later to thank me for believing in her. The friend who says my courage inspired her own. True beauty at this stage of life isn't about turning heads when entering a room in Denver or Toronto, though that still happens. It's about the quality of attention you receive when you speak, the respect evident in how others interact with you. It's about embracing the continuous unfolding of your appearance as just one aspect of your ever-evolving self. The lines around my eyes now seem less like flaws and more like records of laughter. My softened jawline a small price for the sweetness life has offered. This journey has no final destination, no point at which we can declare victory over time. There is only the daily choice to see beauty differently, not as something that diminishes with age, but as something that transforms, deepens, and grows more authentic with every passing year. Before we part ways, if this narrative has touched something in you, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share with other women who might need this reminder of their enduring beauty. Together, we're creating a new vision of aging, one that celebrates rather than fears the passage of time.